Let's go through an example of how to build up a KPI tree. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we make operational excellence practical and easy for you to implement. And one of those things was a fellow viewer who requested me to do an example of a KPI tree and then sort of specifically or requested to do something linked to lead time, to cycle time, that type of flow through the process. And this is based on my assertions that you don't want to take, for instance, that lead time and just go through. So lead time for your whole company, lead time on a plant, lead time on a department, lead time on a... That doesn't work. Neither does that work for OEE or for first time right or for complaints. So the KPIs, they switch a little, but they do stay in the same field, right? They are connected. Basically what you want to do is from the bottom up, you build up towards the main sort of management indicators, right? And that's also one of the things we have been discussing is in a KPI tree, you can at some point mix activity indicators with performance indicators with management indicators, KAIs, KPIs, KMIs, with the idea there being that on the higher level of your KPI hierarchy, you have things that are not per se process performance anymore. They really are, but they are the performance of your company, but they really are the things that interest management. They are the strategic directions. They are like customer satisfaction. Is that a performance KPI? Maybe yes, maybe no, but it's more of a strategic importance. Capital turnover, well, that one is quite close to performance of a business, but still these are much linked to what your business is there to do and what is important for the health of your company. So we took those because lead time more, and lead time is not even really on a site level, although we can easily do this for a site. This is more on a product family level, right? That's one of those things if you take a value stream type of KPI. But the scope is roughly factory or one group of products going through a factory. The responsible person is definitely the site level. Maybe it's a product manager, but more likely a factory manager. And if you improve lead time, you will assume you get better customer satisfaction, but also you will have less inventory, you will have less stuff waiting. So more often, it's not per se that you get a product out more often, but you get the product out with less capital in there. So capital turnover is influenced by a lot of other performance areas as well. If you can just increase how much you produce with the same capital, that will definitely will actually improve the capital turnover, so lower your capital cost. The same is for customer satisfaction. Lead time is not the only thing influencing it, but it does influence those two. So that's how you build up. I did not put all the others here because we're going to be focusing around that lead time, but you see that there's not a one-on-one link, right? There is, in principle, a many-to-many link even here. Then, to make the tree, and what are we going to be looking at inside of our factory, inside of our plant? And so what really influences lead time? We do not have to cover 100% of lead time, but we do want to cover the most important parts. And lead time, it is influenced by the process time or the cycle time and by waiting times, right? Inventory times. Now, technically, lead time is process time plus all of your waiting times. But more interesting as a KPI for us is cycle time. So we already see we're not going to do a 100% closing of lead time because we take the strategic decision to take a slightly different sub-KPI, and also because the timings will be different, we'll not get to 100%. We'll discuss this in a bit. I do want to sort of cover most of the bases, and we can always stripe a few away, but this is what I would put in the departments in the more detailed KPI part for a plant wanting to improve lead time. So basically we get, and 4 is maybe a bit much, but that's because I want to cover it almost 100% for now. We get a cycle time, which is how much is getting through our whole factory. In this case, you can do cycle time on a department or one stream or one process even, but when we still do it sort of at the whole factory level or at the one product family we are going to be doing this for, we're checking how long does it take for our whole process to finish one product or one product batch. You know, these little things, let's not get into them too deeply, but when defining these type of KPIs, you always have to define what is your unit. Is it a batch? Is it a single product? Is it a pallet? Or things like that. So how long does it take us to make one? Which is basically sort of how many did we do in a set of time. And then we have a couple of stocks, basically. The order buffer, the work in progress, and the finished goods stock. They're all inventories. The order buffer, that is how many orders do we have in that we have not started yet. Probably we haven't even ordered materials, but definitely we don't have things in our first process yet. And you just need to define a border here, right? So when does it move to work in progress? Because these three, they do take 100% of your total orders and your total sort of lead time for orders. When does it move from the order buffer to work in progress? Is that as soon as you get the raw materials in, or is it as soon as you do the first process? It's a little bit up to you, and I would make that choice based on how important and how specific are those raw materials. If you do most of your products from roughly the same batch of raw materials, you will always have them in, right? You just work from a big buffer. If you specifically order ingredients for each of your products, then I would tend towards, as soon as you really have the materials in, call it work in progress, because you're taking a lot of risk already. Then at some point it's done, and you put it in a finished goods stock. Again, here, for some companies this won't really be a thing, but if you make standardized product, you almost certainly will just have a stock of ready finished goods. That is sort of unlinked from orders. If you make custom motorcycles, well, probably you don't have a finished goods stock, because as soon as it's almost finished, the customer is already knocking on your door when they can come and collect it, and as soon as it's finished, they just come in, take it. Right, then you call it part of. Anyway, too much detail again. These are inventories. So we have almost sort of process time, but here we take the cycle time, and we have our waiting times. Now, what do we do, especially for these, is we don't really want to know the stock value or the number of items in stock. What we want to know is how many days, right? So this here is in inventory days. And inventory days, we use the takt time, or actually we use this cycle time to calculate. And so we have the number of items, and we multiply that by the cycle time. So they co-depend, right? This is in days because also the lead time is, or in hours or in weeks, but it's in a time unit. Cycle time is also in a time unit, right? How much time is there between batches? So on average, how much time does it take us to make a unit of product? Then when we put that lower into our factory, into our departments, I'm not going to do all of them for now, but let's go more for a production type of department. And a good one to check cycle times, to build up to that, is especially for key lines, key departments, to check their cycle time. So the cycle time of a specific process, especially the bottleneck processes. But cycle time, that is basically how much time did I have divided by how many products did I make. So there is another indicator that is very close to this, and it may or may not be a much more suitable indicator for a certain process. OEE of a process is sort of the same indicator. It does not immediately factor into the cycle time, but it does measure the same type of things we want to know about the process. And that is, are we producing effectively? Are we sort of becoming slower or faster, more efficient or not on making our products in bottleneck processes. And for some processes, cycle time is just a much easier thing to measure. So you just basically say in our 8-hour shift, how many products should we have finished? You can even do that one, right? If you always say 8-hour shift, you can just say number of products finished. But that way, okay, we have 1 hour per unit of product. Did we make 8? We made 7 or we made 9. So with that, we know how much on average we took per unit. OEE, if you have a standard speed of doing 2 products an hour, but then there is also sometimes a breakdown, there's a switchover, changeover cost, there is breaks in between, stuff like that. We need an OEE percentage of 50 with our line that can do 2 an hour to again get to the same cycle time. So it's sort of the same, right? It just looks in a different grain in how to judge the times. Also important, by the way, in both of these, technically also in those one, but you don't really do that at that level, but definitely in these, you take planned downtime out of it. So in your OEE, your planned downtime is in there, but you have it as a category. In cycle time, you say, no, we take net production time. So we don't take into account planned breaks or planned maintenance or even the big changeovers where you say how many hours did you actually have in your 8-hour shift to be producing, right? If you had an hour of breaks here and there and you had a setup of an hour, then you only had 6 hours of net time to be producing, put that in. Those are line level KPIs. A line or sort of department level KPI that is more in the inventory side. The work in progress that we have before a key process. So before a bottleneck usually. See, these here all move into the lead time. This one specifically goes into that work in progress KPI. These two specifically go into the cycle time. Here we look at one process. So here we were looking at all of the inventory we have somewhere in and between our processes and then multiply it by the cycle time of that whole thing. Here we actually take only the inventory in front of that specific bottleneck process and we multiply it by the cycle time of that process. We could do general cycle time, but it's sort of better to do for that process. How much stock in inventory, hopefully minutes, but maybe days, is in front of that machine. Well, minutes is not a lot, hours instead of days. So that one is basically just a way to count how much inventory. You can also do inventory level. Right, so both of these, they are alternatives. And my apologies for writing WHIP there with a purple marker, but that is the line or department level KPI. This too. Which one will you choose? It depends on the situation, right? If the cycle times are almost the same for any type of product that goes through, this is much easier to count because you just count how many orders do we have here, or how many products or pallets of product or kilograms or whatever, right? Here we have to multiply it again to get to how many days do we have. But that is a big advantage of this one because that is a unit of measurement that is much closer to what we like, right? So how many pallet places do we have filled up? Well, your operators will care because they probably have to walk around it and it messes up their production floor, but it's a little bit of an abstract thing, right? It's not really a human parameter. How many days of inventory do we have in front of this machine? What? 4.5 days? Maybe we should tell the boys over in that assembly department to just slow down a bit because we cannot handle it here in final packaging. That is what you would like so that to happen with these types of KPIs as well, right? You want to know the performance of your process, but you also want to use it for daily management. The same is here with these. You want to measure that which is easier for that team. What can they use to actually improve it? This is not just reporting. This is sort of nudging people to think about their processes and tackle problems, tackle the obstacles, and make things flow again. So this is how you build it up. You can go to an even lower level, right? For this, maybe not, but for these, definitely, right? You can go to your hourly idea, or really specifically one line here in how long was my my cleaning. Or how many breakdowns did I have? Those are really line operator level indicators. You can also go for activities that you know you need to do. Did we do all the checks? Did we have the correct settings? Did we do an inventory count? Did we put them in, first out? So this way you set up your tree, and you see it does tend to grow out a bit, because this one also has its own, and that one has its own Christmas tree, but they are not all going to the same departments. The main reason for this Christmas tree effect is that you have multiple departments. So each department, this is a bit of a rule of thumb, is 5 to 7 KPIs is nice. I know that many tend to go up to 10 or 12 or so, which is already quite a bit. If you always include your sort of 2 mandatory safety, 2 mandatory quality KPIs, and I call them mandatory if they don't directly, I know they affect your process, mainly your work process, right? But if they're not really a process performance KPI, yeah, sort of ignore them. But on the process performance, 5 to 7. No. So stop there. If you have, like I at one point had, a factory with over 100 KPIs on a weekly level, start trimming that tree, right? That's what we did there immediately. But it grows out into that Christmas tree larger shape because you have a bunch of KPIs, but then the cycle time, the order buffer, they are of different importance to different departments. So some departments will take this and continue on, right? The production departments, safety is not interested, logistics is hardly interested in this. But these, probably all in logistics and planning, that one is very directly in the warehousing. This one will go into operations, into production, but these two probably not. So that's how you do have quite a number of KPIs on the lower levels if you combine all of your departments. But one meeting, one KPI meeting, 5 to 7. I hope that this clarified a little bit how you can make KPI trees, right? And how you can also make sure that they feed into the top level KPIs, but don't have to cover 100%. You change sort of the unit of measurement of the same concept you are still trying to achieve, and you focus it, you translate it into units of measurement that for that layer of management are ideally suited to support their processes. Now, this of course is something you really need to think about for your own processes. So even if you have lead time, don't copy this. And quite honestly, people at corporate levels, so if you are somebody at a corporate level, please refrain from having a standardized KPI tree for all of your factories. Having standardized KPIs at the plant level, that's quite okay. Just like a plant manager might want to have a couple of standardized KPIs for the department functioning. But if you go down further, they need to be tailored to your organization. And I know very few big organizations where each factory and department is so similar that they can work with the same KPI tree. So that's a pointer, especially if you are working at a global level or at a corporate level. But if you want to do this for your organization and you still feel a bit hesitant, that is one of the services I do provide. So if you want us to go through your own organization's KPI setup together, let me know. Also, if this just triggered some questions, some experiences, please do write them down, share them in the comments. I love reading about your experiences, your takes on this, because This is quite an important topic in operational excellence and continuous improvement, so I'm sure you have some experience in it and some thoughts on it. I would love to read those. For now, I wish you the best of luck setting up an ideal KPI tree for your organization, and as always, don't forget to also enjoy the continuous improvement journey.